Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, I'm doing another review on the channel today. Today, I'm checking out the Record Pie. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. One thing we always talk about on social media and on YouTube is all of the quality control issues that we've had with vinyl records over the last several years. One of the biggest issues I've had is it seems like, especially most of the new records I buy, I'd probably say over 50% of them are warped in some way. Some of them aren't very warped, maybe just got a little bit of wobble to them. And some of them are so warped that I've had to return some of them because it affects the sound quality of the album. So as vinyl records have gotten more popular over the last several years, and they've really started, the pressing plants have really started cranking out albums, I feel like the quality control in a lot of pressing plants has gone down. You know, a vast majority, I shouldn't say a vast majority, probably over 50% of all the new albums I buy have some kind of warping to them. That's probably the biggest quality control issue that I have with vinyl records. It's probably the most common that I see. And there's varying degrees to the warping that I see. Some of them have just a little bit of a wobble to them, all the way up to some of them are so warped that it really impacts the sound quality on the album. So over the last year or so, because of all this warping that I've seen on albums, I've considered picking up one of these record flattening systems. And I've gone back and forth between the Record Pie and I think the Vinyl Flat are the two big ones that are available out there. And the reviews for both of them have been really good. I decided to go with the Record Pie, and it is the more expensive of the two systems, but they had a big sale just recently, made it a little bit more affordable, even though it's still really expensive, I think. But it looks like a great system. I really wanted to get my hands on it, check it out, and see what I thought of it. I will say that this video in no way is sponsored by Record Pie. This is something I went out and spent my money on and bought because it looks like something that I could really use. Like I said, I'm getting so many records that are warped. I wanted a good way to flatten my records and maintain the sound quality on them. So before I get into the demonstration of the Record Pie, I did want to kind of touch on a couple of things before I get into it. With the Record Pie, if you're going to get one, I really recommend going through, setting it up, doing a dry run the first time, running it through, heating it up without a vinyl record in it, just to make sure you got everything all set up. The other thing is, before you clean or flatten any of your records, make sure you clean them really well with a wet solution, whether it's I use a groove washer, or you can use Spin Clean, something like that, some kind of wet cleaner that's going to really clean the surface of the album, because you don't want to bake any kind of dirt or grime into the record. So overall, this thing is pretty easy to set up. It comes in this really nice carrying case. It also doubles as the heating bag for the Record Pie. Go ahead and open this thing up here. And this is the heating case for the Record Pie. And then you've got your control switch and your power cord in these carrying compartments on the other side of the bag. And then in this little bag here, this is the temperature gauge that plugs into the bottom of the Record Pie. So you plug this into your wall, and then the power supply from the Record Pie will plug into this, and this will be where you control the heating element for the Record Pie. So it's a pretty straightforward little device here. You just unscrew this nut on the top, and then you're able to pull off the top plate. I'm not a big fan of the nut, how it's offset on there, but maybe I might replace it eventually. But so this comes off. This has a little nut on the top, or a little washer on top of it here also. And then this has two felt pads on the inside. You'll place your record between those felt pads, and this is supposed to protect the grooves on the record. The one thing I will recommend, that if you do get a Record Pie, that the first time you use it, heat it up and run everything through it without a record inside of it. I did a dry run just to make sure that everything was connected properly, that it heated properly, and all the timers, everything worked, without having to ruin any records. And then after heating everything up, I let it cool down, And then I did 2 cycles where I tried using records that I knew if I ruined them, it wouldn't be too big of an issue. And then I've also now gone through and done a couple of runs with good records and gotten really good results out of this. So for this run through, I'm going to try to flatten this is the new Blink-182 album. Came out earlier this year. I think it was September when this album came out. This is One More Time. This is the variant that I pre-ordered through their website a year ago, and was really disappointed that it was warped when I got it. I'll put a video up of how warped it is. It's not like super warped, but it's definitely enough to notice. So hopefully I'm going to be able to flatten this one out. So I think this is a pretty typical representation of a lot of newer records I get, where it's not like super warped, but it's warped enough to really notice it while I'm playing it. And sometimes if there's like this one, there's kind of a hump to it, it can impact the sound quality of the album. All right, since the B side on this album is a little bit more warped than the A side, I'm going to go ahead and put the B side down. Just make sure you kind of keep it centered on that bottom felt pad. And the upper felt pad goes on here, and then the top plate. And then there's a little washer you don't want to forget goes on there. And then you'll go ahead and put the nut on there. I will say the nut will swing, the bolt on it will spin a little bit from the bottom. So I'll just put my finger on there just to give it a nice little tighten. Just want to get it snug on there. And then this is the temperature probe that comes with it. Temperature probe just plugs into the suction cup on the bottom. Just like that. And then that's it. You'll go ahead and slide this into the heating bag. Go ahead and put the strap across there. And then the white cord, the power cord for the record pie, and the wire for the probe will stick out of the bag here. Go ahead and zip that up. So with the control panel, this is the control panel for it. If you go ahead and plug this thing in without having the temperature probe plugged in the side of it, it's going to give you a big error message and it'll beep once it comes on here. So it's come up with an error message. So if you get that error message, it's either the temperature probe isn't plugged in properly on the side or it's not plugged into the bottom. Well, actually, I think it's just if it's not plugged into the side, it'll beep like that and come up with an error message. So right now, just reading the temperature of the record pile while it's sitting in the bag. So we'll go ahead and plug in the power cord for the heating element in it. And I'll go ahead and shut it off here. So there's a really nice app you can use to help control the record pie. So the app is called Smart Life. I know there's a couple of different Smart Lifes on there. That's what it should look like on the App Store or the Google Play Store. So go ahead and open that up, and I already have my record pie added to it. So I can just click on there, and it brings it up, and I can just hit start. And then once this thing starts, it'll start heating up. So now that this thing is heating up, I'll go ahead and set a timer on my phone here. I'll just set a timer for 2 hours. If this thing is going to heat up to 125 degrees, I'll let it bake for 2 hours. And then once it turns off, I'll set another timer for an hour. It says 40 minutes in the instructions, but I let it cool for a full hour before I take the record out. So now that the 2 hour cycle is over, there's one or two ways I can stop this. I can either hit the power button here on the controller, or if I go into the Smart Life app, I can actually shut this off from the app. I will say that one of the first albums I tried to flatten in the record pie, I used this app to turn it off. I was actually in another room, and when I went back about a half an hour later, the record pie was still on. So I will say that I won't use the app if I'm not like physically in the area. I can double check and make sure that it was turned off. I will say that the album was fine. There was no damage done to it. You know, having sat in the the 125 degree heat for it was probably an extra 25 to 35 minutes. But it did end up being just fine. So now that the album is sat in the record pie for 2 hours, like I said before in the instructions, it says to let it cool inside the bag for 40 minutes. I normally do an hour. I've been doing an hour, and it's been fine. So I'm going to set this thing for an hour, and then we'll pull the album out and see how it looks. All right, so now that this thing's been cooling in the bag for an hour, let's take this thing out. Even after a while, even after an hour, the record pie itself is still a tad warm, so I'm sure this record is still a little warm also. So what I do is once I'm done with it, I'll take this and put it back in its sleeve and let it lay on a flat surface for a little bit longer to finish cooling. And then after being in the record pie, you can see there's not a single wave to it. It might look a little warped still, but I think it just might be moving the camera a little bit. This thing is absolutely flat, and I think this is really the result I'm getting over and over again with the record pie. So as you can see from the video, this thing is really easy to set up and use. I've been so happy with this thing so far. I've probably flattened at least 6 or 7 albums. They've all done a great job. There was one that was a little more warped than some of the other ones I have flattened, and it didn't completely make it flat, but it did a really good job making it very minimal. Just one pass through the record pie. And what the instructions and some of the reviews also say is sometimes it takes a couple of bakes on an album to get it nice and flat. I haven't had an issue with that so far. All the albums I've run through there, I've only needed one time through the record pie to get it nice and flat. And like I said, during the demonstration, I messed up and didn't double check and make sure the record pie was off. I just used the app and thought it was off, and it wasn't. I ended up baking one of my albums for an extra, I don't remember what it was, 30 or 35 minutes. And I was surprised. I pulled it out. There wasn't no sound issues with it. I was really kind of nervous at first. It sounds great. It's a perfectly flat album. So even a little bit longer, I think you're going to be okay than just the 2-hour bake time. So even though the record pie is the more expensive of the options out there, I think it's hands down the best choice. I've loved this thing so far. Like I said, it's really easy to use. It does a great job of flattening your records. You just want to be careful. If it's always start slow. Always start slow and low on temperature. If you feel like you need to go under the 125 degree temperature, you can start a little lower. Start it at a less than 2 hours. If you got something that's really irreplaceable, if you've got a really expensive several $100 album, you can't replace it. You can definitely start even lower than that. Start like 100 degrees. Only bake it for an hour. And pull it out and see if how it did with the warping, if it leveled it out any or flattened it out any. If it's something, like I said, irreplaceable, definitely start low and slow with the process. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of the record pie. Do you have one? Is it something you're considering? If you get the money to spend on it, if it's something you can pick up, I highly recommend grabbing one. Like I said, if you're someone that's buying a lot of newer records like I do, it's something you got to have. I mean, it just really helps with all those warps. If it's something like really, really warped, like something really crazy, it might not be able to flatten it out. But I think for a vast majority of the warping issues you're having on albums, this will definitely help. But let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.